Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up, the WNW 264 for Friday, December 16th, 2016, 12/16/16. My first story, not about Syria, not about Donald Trump and the Electoral College and that chicanery there. It's about interest rates. I think that's the biggest story. Because everything is going to hinge around interest rates in the economy, Donald Trump's success, your success. Everything is going to hinge around interest rates. And what happened this week? The Fed boost interest rates, foresee three hikes in 2017. The Fed boost interest rates a quarter of a point. Now, some people looked at this like, oh, they want it to be one and done, and whatever. They have three hikes that they're going to do in 17. But I think this was dovish to me. Remember what happened last year at this time, almost to the week, that the Federal Reserve came out and they said, we're going to raise interest rates, and they did. And then they said they're going to have four increases in 2016. And what happened? They only raised them once. And I've been telling you the reason why they weren't raising rates. The economy isn't that hot. Well, guess what? The economy still isn't that hot. Now, Donald Trump may make the economy hotter by bringing all this capital back in and cutting regulation, and he may get the inflation that the Fed actually wants. We'll see. I mean, be careful what you wish for. I'm hoping the economy gets better, but there's going to be a downside to that. That's going to be rising interest rates to combat inflation. That's going to happen. But you know what? They've already been rising. And this is what Jim Sinclair said in his interview was, the Fed, the interest rates ran right past the Fed. What's he talking about? Ran right past the Fed. Well, they just raised them a quarter of a point, but they were already going up. This is the 10-year note. Now, the reason why I bring up the 10-year note, this is what sets mortgage rates. Mortgage rates went from, 3.5, 3.4 to 4%. That's supposed to be some crisis. But look at this. This is what it is now, 2.60. But look what it was on July 25th, 2016, right here. It was 1.46%. And then here, this week, it shoots up to 2.6%. Folks, that's over a percent increase in interest rates in 5 months. That's just like the Federal Reserve, just about like the Federal Reserve, raising rates a quarter of a point every month for the last 5 months. And yet you're seeing new highs in the stock market. And people don't seem to be all that worried about, rising interest rates are good for the economy. Not when you have $20 trillion in debt. This is a problem. And we've seen, these big houses, I think J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, one of them said to 2.75% for the 10-year Treasury. And look where it is now, 2.6. And at 3%, Jim Sinclair said that, also one of the other big houses, 3%, all hell's going to break loose. Well, what's going to happen? The bonds are going to be sold. People are going to wait and take losses as rates go up, the values go down. As rates go down, the value of the bond goes up. Because, if you have a 4% bond and it goes down to 3%, wow, you got a 4% bond that you can't get now. So when you sell that into the market, you could demand a higher price because, after all, it's 4%, you can only get 3%. The opposite happens when rates go up. You have a 2% bond, rates go up to 3%, and hey, you can't get par for that. You got to discount that. You lost money. And think about all the negative interest rate paying bonds, debt in Europe. You think they're freaking out? You think, wow, they thought maybe, rates would be stable for the next 3 or 4 years or whatever. They could just, hide out in their European bonds. Well, guess what? That ain't happening. And why would the interest rates be jumping up on the U.S. Treasury bond? Well, as Jim Sinclair said, these central banks, the Federal Reserve, can be overrun. Maybe they're being overrun. China dumps treasuries. Foreign central banks liquidate a record $400 billion in U.S. paper. We have a $20 trillion deficit, folks. And they're dumping our bonds. China and other central banks are dumping our bonds. They're looking at what Trump's going to do, and they're saying, wow, Trump, he's probably going to, bring all this money back. He's probably going to cut all this regulation. He probably is going to get the economy going. And these bonds are going to be worth spit. We need to sell. And that's what they're doing. They're selling. John Williams, what is the number he came up with? He said at least 16 trillion U.S. dollar liquid assets. We're talking about a lot of that is bonds held outside the country. So you're watching your, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 10-year Treasury, and you're watching that bond lose value when rates are 6% on a 10-year Treasury. That's a huge percentage increase, folks. I've been talking about that. And that is we're in the biggest global debt bubble in history. I mean, as Manarino told me once, the debt market is orders of magnitude bigger than the stock market. Forget about the stock market. Watch the debt market. He's right. And you're talking about, sovereign debt, that's stuff like treasuries and euro bonds. You're talking about corporate debt. You're talking about mortgages. You're talking about municipal debt. All this stuff's going to be more expensive. Money is going to be more expensive. Bonds are going to be worth less. And we have a lot of debt globally. We added to the debt ball from 2008 and 9 to get where we are now. We didn't fix anything. We just added to debt. We made the ball bigger. This is like having cancer. And you go to the doctor and the doctor says, wow, man, you got cancer. Now listen, we can cut that cancer out. And it's really going to hurt. And you're going to have a big hole in your side or wherever it is. It's going to hurt. We probably can take care of it. It's going to hurt. You may even die from it, but it's going to hurt and it's going to be rough. Or I could give you some morphine and you could just forget about it and you'll feel great. Guess what we took? We took the morphine. Guess what happened to the cancer? That's the debt. And listen, this ends terribly. This is not a good ending, folks. If you think there's a good ending to it, we can grow our way out of it. And listen, I'm all for Trump. I think it's better to have him involved than anybody else. And what he may do with this, if the bond selling gets too rough, is he may say, hey, no more full faith and credit. We're going to just default on it. And look what's happening in Venezuela. They did away with their big bills. There's run on banks. The Venezuelans fight to protect their savings. They're trying to get their money out of the banks as government pulls bills from circulation, the big bills. They're combating terrorism and fraud and crime and whatever. Meanwhile, normal people who want to just save some money in the bank, well, they can't do it because they're going to get it confiscated or it's going to be inflated or whatever. They want their money right now so they can put it in real assets. They can go ahead and buy that washer and dryer or that ounce of silver or whatever instead of having it locked up in the banking system. And that's what's going on, folks. That's why I think it's a huge story. I mean, we talked about Jim Rickards, who came on here with the 4-time best-selling author now with his latest book, his 4th book. And he was talking about, the system is going to close down. That's what he said. It is. Not it may, not it could. It is. What the problem is he doesn't know whether it'll be weeks or months before we have another system. Wow, that's a Mad Max scenario. I mean, you don't have any way to trade. You don't have any way to conduct business. How many times have you seen some boob in front of you? How many times have I seen some absolute boob in front of me buy a cup of coffee for $4 and put it on their debit card? They don't have any money. So therein lies, this is why that is my most important story, is the interest rates. That's the canary in the coal mine. And if you're looking at the 10-year Treasury, that canary is either getting ready to fall off the bar or has already fallen off the bar and is dead on the floor with that kind of an increase percentage-wise. I mean, it's a huge increase in 5 months. That is all the while the Fed wasn't raising rates but once. Think about that. That's like the Fed raising rates. Can you imagine what the headlines would be if since July, August, September, October, November, December, that they raised rates 0.25%? That's about what that's equal to. Could you imagine what the headlines would be? Could you imagine what happened to the stock markets? It's unbelievable. President Obama, this is a little story from the New York Times that I got, and I'm going to start off with this here. And what is he doing? Here we go. Let's get in here. Obama, come on, give me there we go. He orders a study, there we go, to detail Russian hacking. Obama orders study to detail Russian hacking. And why? Why? Because he seeks proof, because he doesn't have any, of meddling as Donald Trump expresses doubts. Of course Donald Trump expresses doubts. And you know what they don't put in here? Let me tell you what they don't put. Let me show you the headlines from the past week. Trump dismisses CIA claim on Russia. Really, it's just Trump that dismisses that claim? Here we go again, next day. Here with USA Today again, this little tiger beat. Trump dispels notion that Russia meddled with election. Really? How about the FBI dispelling that notion? How about other intelligence agencies dispelling that notion? How about James Comey, the director of the FBI, saying it didn't happen? That they have known this. Even though they wrote these headlines, they knew that the FBI has said long ago, no, the FBI isn't hacking into. We had leaks. Hillary Clinton had a completely, totally unprotected server. The leaks came from John Podesta and the DNC, and Hillary Clinton. That's a whole nother echelon. Also, President Obama was conversing with her with his own private email account with her unprotected, totally unprotected servers. That was another thing, and of course I've said many times that she had multiple servers to hide the fact she was taking treasonous bribes in the form of donations to her global charity fraud. So Comey's out this week, and he tells Trump, hey, the Russians didn't influence the election, and this is what I love. And then Comey also told Trump that James Clapper, the director of National Intelligence, agreed with this FBI assessment. Clapper had said before he was the guy that lied to Congress under oath about spying on Americans. He had walked this back before. They had reported this, 17 agencies agree. No, James Clapper, who's ahead of those things, but they don't agree. And then he walked it back and said, well, I don't have any proof. Why do you think, Donald? Why do you think the president is trying to get proof? Because he doesn't have it. And he's not going to get it. And then you have John Kerry of his State Department out this week saying that, he doesn't believe in the Russian hacking either. Now, do you think John Kerry would make a statement like that without telling his boss, hey, boss, I'm going to make you look stupid here. I'm going to tell people that, that the Russians didn't really hack our elections, and they didn't. And also remember, another thing that came out in the WikiLeaks, you remember when Hillary Clinton came out that the Clinton campaign and Hillary Clinton tried to early on in the Republican primaries help Donald Trump because that's the candidate they wanted to run against? Remember that? Also, do you remember that John Podesta got a $35 million payday from the Russians? You remember how it came out in the Clinton Cash Book and other publications that Hillary Clinton, through getting $145 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation, the Russians ended up with 20% of our uranium production. That was the Uranium One deal that she approved of. Remember that? Isn't that a Russian tie, a real one? The idea that Donald Trump was helped by the Russians, even Vladimir Putin, is saying nonsense. Come on. Come on. And all this to add doubt to the electoral colleges, their last-ditch effort to get the electoral college to, the Russians were involved in our election. They weren't. Vote against Donald Trump and vote for Hillary, who actually gave the Russians 20% of our nuclear production, and her campaign manager got a $35 million payday. Yeah, right. Yeah, give the money to her with a global charity fraud who committed treason. Yeah, that's who we need as president. Right. Right, the lying, cheating, weasel Democrats, Deborah Wasserman Schultz had to step down for cheating against Bernie Sanders. Donna Brazile, she was caught cheating. The mainstream media was colluding with the Clinton camp and also the Democratic National Committee. This is the Democrats were caught on camera fomenting violence. They were trying to get violence at Trump rallies, caught on camera. The Bob Kramer, who went to the White House dozens of times and had at least 40 meetings with the president, he quit. He was paid by the Democrats in the Clinton Foundation, in the Clinton camp, who gave money to the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. Also, another guy caught on with Project Veritas of voter fraud. You're talking about voter fraud. And then you have, the President Obama, right here, he's encourages illegal immigrants to vote. When you vote, you're a citizen yourself. Remember that little quote? Also, all the recounts rendered really more votes for Donald Trump, and also exposed the fact there was voter fraud, election fraud. More people voted than are registered to vote. People voted multiple times. The same person voted multiple. All this came out. They keep telling us on the left that there's no election fraud. There's no voter fraud. All the while, California issues driver's licenses to illegal immigrants, and then, on election day, they don't check the driver's license that shows that they're not supposed to vote. They don't check any of that. Right. Right. We're supposed to, with all this evidence of voter fraud, oh, there's no fraud. And why is there fraud? Why do the Democrats want these open borders? You know, the Democrats used to be the blue-collar party. They used to be for the working man. They're not anymore. They're for the immigrant. They're for the person that changes the face of the electorate, that changes the face of America, whether it's, the refugees that can't be vetted. Hillary Clinton herself said they couldn't be vetted from Syria, or massive amounts of illegal aliens, or all these children, which, one report said 70% weren't children that came from Central America. I mean, what they're doing is absolutely unbelievable. And they know that when Trump gets in, he's going to change that, and he has wide support. I'm going to bring this up again. The hidden Ipsos poll, which nobody wanted to talk about, nobody brought out. They brought this up, with 4 or 5 days after the week after the election. The public strongly backs Donald Trump's plan to pause legal immigration. They also strongly back a plan to get rid of the 3 million criminal aliens in the country and also enforce the immigration laws. Yes, they strongly back that. Because this flood of immigration destroys the wages of ordinary people, especially in the entry-level positions. It destroys them. And so that's what they're worried about. You know what they're also worried about? I talked to Warren Pollock, who's going to come on soon. It takes him a while to come up with a snapshot of future predictions and what's going on and where he thinks things are going. He spends a lot of time on it. Warren Pollock, great mind, great analyst, and he and I were talking, and he says, Trump's, I don't care what you say, he's going to have to go after these people. He's going to have to go after the crime and the swamp things. And, two of the biggest swamp things are Bill and Hillary Clinton and their global charity fraud. And the problem with that is it's going to snare a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. They knew this was going on. Come on. They knew it's too big for them not to know this was going on. And he says that's why they're desperate for this, for everything they can do to try to get the Electoral College. I mean, there's reports of that people being threatened, the voters for the Electoral College voters that are going to vote for ultimately the president's formality. It's always been a formality in the past, and they're desperate. And they're desperate they're going to stop the changing face of America with all this illegal immigration and the other immigration that's happening. And also, which we can't afford, that's the biggest thing. And also this out, hey, Clinton investigation back on. FBI agents in New York ordered to continue Foundation probe. Yes, the global charity fraud called the Clinton Foundation. That Chelsea Clinton runs? The multi-billion-dollar foundation where donations, pay to play, are sinking. This is why she had the servers, again, multiple servers, to hide the fact she was taking treasonous bribes in the form of donations to her global charity fraud. Yes, that's the person we need to have be president, right? Yeah, no. But evidently this is back on, and this plays in with what Warren Pollock told me before this headline even came out, was that, Trump's going to have to. He's going to have to go after these guys. Otherwise, they're just going to sit there and ping, 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 take pot shots at him until, and he won't be successful. And so that's what's going on. Facebook, they're going to be the arbiter of what real news is. Yeah, that's right. Zuckerberg. Yeah, he's going to be doing that. Yeah, Facebook is going to use Snopes, which is an ultra left-wing, not even a news source. We could never use that at ABC or CNN. Snopes. I can never quote Snopes. And other fact checkers to combat and bury fake news. Snopes, right. This is a left-wing organization out in California, is what I'm told. And that's going to be one of their fact checkers. Now, one of the stories that in this headline that I pulled was, Pope supports Donald Trump. Okay, yes, that's fake. But what about all the fake news by the mainstream press? How many times did the mainstream press tell us Trump didn't have a chance? I believe Breitbart counted it 26 times. Isn't that fake? Isn't that fake? How about them not discussing the global charity fraud that is the Clinton Foundation that makes Watergate look like a schoolyard prank? Yes, yes, Woodward and Bernstein, give back your Pulitzers. If you don't understand why, that's a way bigger story than the little crappy story that you worked on in the 70s, which didn't involve a global charity fraud, and it didn't involve a treason, and didn't involve huge gaffes in national security. Yes, give back your Pulitzers if you didn't work on that story, because you didn't. More fake news. Can you imagine the New York Times hiring Glenn Thrush from Politico? Glenn Thrush. Who's Glenn Thrush? He's the guy that gave his script more than once to the Clinton camp so he could give it to John Podesta and other people to make sure that what he was saying was okay with them. He gave the Clinton camp script approval. That's a journalist. He even in the emails, thank you WikiLeaks, came out and said that he was a hack. He called himself a hack, Glenn Thrush. And yet New York Times hires him and says that Glenn Thrush is a premier political journalist. Really? Not according to him. He calls himself a hack. And this is the same New York Times that came out after the election and said, oh, we're going to report now. We're going to go back to reporting fairly, and we're going to report without fear or favor. And oh, by the way, we covered the campaign fairly. Not. That's what they said. They said they covered it fairly. They didn't. Not. Lie. And then they're going to hire Glenn Thrush, who calls himself a hack, who gave the Clinton camp script approval at Politico. This is the guy they have to have. This is going to be the arbiter of the truth, the beacon of light. Glenn Thrush, the hack, calls himself a hack in the email. The New York Times, they're dying. The layoffs in 2017 are going to be stunning. Speaking of fake news, I want to show you this. Let me just get this up for you here. And I want you to read along here with me. This is they're asking the question, which is, is Aleppo, sinks into humanitarian crisis, but it's not genocide. When you mention the word humanitarian crisis and genocide in the same sentence, lots of people are dying. Period. The end. You can call it whatever you like. But here is the report. I want you to read it for yourself. Here, let me get it in there, and then let it get. Hold on. Get in. There we go. A humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Aleppo as here it is. The rebel-held Syrian city falls to government forces. Rebel-held? Who are the rebels? Who are the rebels in Aleppo? Free Syrian Army? They're long gone. Al-Qaeda? No. Actually, ISIS is so crazy, they were killing Al-Qaeda because they weren't crazy enough. Those are the rebels. And for USA Today to come out and tell you that there is some rebel force, that the rebels are holding the Syrians, those aren't rebels, folks. That's Al-Qaeda. That is Al-Qaeda. That is ISIS. Those are the rebels. This is the U.S. This is the CIA backed them. And I'll tell you another big problem that's been going on, and that is the reason why we had all these leaks. And I want to go, and now that I'm talking about Syria, I want to talk about Seymour Hersh, the famed journalist Seymour Hersh, one of the last really good ones. And he comes out, I don't know, late last year or late this year, or early this year or late last year, and he talks about this story about how the CIA and their operatives are fighting against the Pentagon and its operatives. The Pentagon in Syria, the Pentagon is helping the Assad regime and the Russians against ISIS and the CIA. Now, that is a huge divide inside government, particularly with the military and the intelligence services. A huge divide, folks. You think that just went away? Do you think that didn't roll into the election? The Russians didn't hack the United States. They didn't have to. They may have gotten all the stuff on Hillary's server in case she won to use against her to blackmail her, but these were leaks. These were leaks, and this was a counter coup to the coup that was going on. This is why all this stuff came out. The intelligence services, some of the intelligence services, like the Pentagon against the CIA in Syria. Yeah, this is what happened, folks. This is homegrown going to war. This is why Donald Trump is putting all these generals in charge and all these tough people in charge. Mattis, you put him in at the Pentagon, the Department of the Secretary of Defense. This is a real guy. I think Trump's getting ready to go to war inside the country. I don't mean like a civil war, like, shooting and that kind of thing. This is why Jeff Sessions is the Attorney General. They're going to have to go after people, as Warren Pollock said. The other thing is the other big story is these interest rates. And I've got Egon von Greyerz on. He's the early Sunday release. You got to listen to him. He's talking about gold. Gold's had these big hits down. He vaults gold for rich people at a couple of secret locations around the world. And he talks to important people. They're not worried. They know how this ends. Not worried. Egon von Greyerz is the early Sunday release. And one last thing I wanted to bring on is, this op-ed piece. This is the Bleeding Heart, op-ed piece. We only want our thoughts and our policies put out there. And, real people rely on Obamacare. Yeah, well, a whole lot more real people pay for it than rely on it. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable, the amount of increases. I mean, what were they talking about in Arizona? Some people are going to get 115, 16% increase. Me personally, I'm not on Obamacare. I'm a Blue Cross Blue Shield. Since this went into effect, my insurance has gone up 120%. I mean, it's unbelievable. I just had friends of ours from Connecticut. They just got their latest insurance bill, and their premiums have gone up $400 a month. In one, boom, now $400 more into time. Man, you're talking about $400 a month. You're talking about a nice little car payment, a little Versa. You're talking about lots of money out of you. That's on top of the increases you've already had. And now you have people like Clara McCaskill, senator from Missouri, and other Democrats saying, Obamacare, we're ready to do away with it too. It's imploding. It is imploding. It's like Bill Clinton said, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. Your premiums have doubled. You pay more, basically, is what he's saying, and you get less. Your deductibles are huge. It's the craziest thing he's ever heard of. Bill Clinton said that. I'm sure they would like to get rid of it for a single payer system, but that's not going to happen either. But that is one of the things that Carl Denninger a few years ago said, Clinton, the Obamacare is going to kill the economy. That's why they put it off all those. They kept putting it off. They knew it was going to kill the economy. It was the biggest policy lie in history. Thank you, Jonathan Gruber, for going on and basically detailing the lie and how Americans are stupid and how it's, to your advantage to, not be transparent. That's going to change too, folks. But listen, the interest rates, we have a lot of debt, folks. $20 trillion in debt. Yeah, I know you've heard the story how Obama took the debt and doubled it. Okay. Well, George Bush took the debt, about $5 trillion, and made it about $10 trillion. Not quite. Obama took the debt, about $10 trillion, and he's now going to have about $20 trillion in debt. I suspect Donald Trump will also balloon the debt. He will balloon the debt. He may get the economy going, but he may also get some other things going that he didn't count on as well. Watch the early Sunday release. Egon von Greyerz, he is the founder of Matterhorn Asset Management. Watch him as the early Sunday release. Thank you so much for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments and your donations. That helps us out. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, and above all, spiritually. Fear not, God the Father is in charge, and I want to leave you with this. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, folks. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.